Hello guys, and welcome in or welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be discussing what would it take for me to buy an eyeshadow palette at this point. Now the reason I want to make this video is because I'm kind of in a perpetual state of low or no buy by nature of I just don't have the money to be spending on makeup like that. So I do have to be kind of choosy with what I bring into my collection. And by far, one of my favorite things about makeup is gonna be eyeshadow. I love palettes, I love the colors, I love looking at it, I love just, like I love just, and that's how I feel. So but I can't have all of them. I don't want all of them. I still want to be able to use what I have. So today I'm just going to walk through my criteria for what it would take for me to actually buy an eyeshadow palette at this point in time. If you watched my other video about do you need that and answering those questions, this is kind of in the same vein. Like I said, a lot of things I have to work my way through to decide whether or not I should bring it into my collection or whether or not it will be worth it to bring into my collection. So this is just going to be me walking through answering that question. If you would like to hear about what it would take for me to buy an eyeshadow palette, just stay tuned. So the reason why I have to be kind of choosy, like I said, is one, just because of income. Two, I don't want to own a lot of things. I still want to be able to use what I have. And three is because I know that I've passed the point of necessity. Now, of course, nobody needs makeup. Of course not. But in terms of just sheer amount of items that I own, I have passed what any reasonable person could actually use. So I'm aware that at this point, all the makeup I buy is a sunk cost, okay? I'm aware that it's in excess, like I live in excess at this point. It's a sunk cost. I'm not gonna get any return on investment for it. So therefore, the only thing I'm getting out of any one purchase is the utility that it provides to me personally. So I just want to make sure that I'm gonna get the maximum benefit that I could possibly get, given that it's not really gonna, it's just kind of gonna be like another thing amongst things, if that makes any sense to you. So the first thing that it would take for me to buy an eyeshadow palette is that it has to have a unique color story. That one right there alone will take out like the bulk of eyeshadow palettes that come out on the market today. Now, any of these that I'm gonna talk about, any of these points usually will kind of knock a palette out of the running. But this one in particular, I think is very, very telling, because if we look at most palettes nowadays, like I'm aware that there's nothing new under the sun. I'm aware that everything has been done before in some capacity, but you know, some brands, they could at least try to come up with something that's a little bit more unique. And a lot of times the answer to that is no. It's not anything I haven't seen already 1,000 times over. So just simply having a unique color story is enough to kind of get my attention. So the next point that I look to when I'm looking to buy an eyeshadow palette is, am I inspired by it? Kind of in the same thing with the unique color story, like does the packaging, the presentation, the colors chosen, the layout, does that inspire me? That doesn't usually happen. It's very hard for me to look at a palette and be inspired by it, most of them today. Most of them I usually feel either like blah, like bored by it, or I feel very, if I'm not bored by it, I'll feel usually just uninspired. Like it doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't give me like the shivers, so to speak, of eyeshadow palettes. The last palette I bought, just to put it in perspective, was in January, and it was the Nabla Dreamy 2 palette, because that was the first palette in a while at that point that I was actually genuinely inspired by. And you know what? No regrets for that palette. I love it. I think it's great. And even though it's like not necessarily like, you know, the most unique palette, like I still get a lot of utility out of that one. So that's kind of a big thing for me, is am I inspired by it? Because even if it's kind of a repeat, even if it's not necessarily the most unique, if I'm inspired by this palette, I'm more likely to use it and I'm more likely to get something out of it. So that's my next point, is am I inspired by it? So this one is a point that goes with this, and it's not really like a point, it's like kind of it's like a 2.5, like a soft point. Is the packaging. So packaging isn't a make or break for me. I care more about what's in the packaging than what's outside of it. But if packaging is good and I like what's inside of it, it's helps. It's a beneficial, it's a benefit. If I don't care for the packaging, but I still like it inside, it depends on what it is. It depends, like, but packaging is, like I said, like a 2.5, like a soft, point. That's not a full point by itself, but packaging helps. So number 3, and I think is a big one for a lot of us, you know, melanated folk, us people of color, is I have to be able to use 90% of the palette. I've accepted that most palettes out there are always gonna have that like 1 or 2 shades that I just can't use. Like, that's just gonna look like white ash on me. I've accepted it. But if most of the palette is white ash, it's a no for me, dog.
Sorry to this man.
Like, that one right there is another one that kind of knocks a lot of palettes out of the running. Because if all of the colors are just super duper like light, then they're all gonna like start to almost homogenize and just look very similar on me. The nuance in color gets lost without that depth. So without the depth of shades, the nuances in the different colors get really, really lost. It's partially why I never bought, well, amongst other reasons, why I never bought any of like the ColourPop little monochromatic palettes or whatever, because some of the colors in there were so light that no matter what, they're just gonna pull ashy on me. And it's gonna be really hard for me to get like full looks out of it and use everything within the palette. So for me, if I look at a palette and it has 10 shades and I can only use like 5 or 6 of them, I'm like, no, I'll automatically no. Because then what am I paying for? You know what I'm saying? If I'm paying for a palette, I can't use half the shades in it. Like, what am I really paying for? So yeah, I have to be able to use 90% of the shades, which may seem kind of strict, but again, if I'm paying money for it, why should I have to compromise half the palette?
I mean.
So the last point I want to make is that in order for me to buy an eyeshadow palette, it can't be too similar to something I already own. Again, I'm aware that nothing's new under the sun. Everything's been announced in some way, shape, or form. Everything's been done. So I'm not saying that, you know, they have to like invent new colors of the rainbow. If they do, cool. But I'm not saying that. But if it just looks exactly like something that I already have, then, and in my logic, my brain logic is, well, why don't I just use what I already have versus buying something else? Like, how much value can it really be to me if it looks exactly like something I already have? Or alternatively, maybe it doesn't look exactly like it, but it looks too similar to like a couple of things that I have. So for example, if it's a palette and it's like 10 shades, half of it looks like one palette, half of it looks like the other, then why don't I just, you know, use those two together? Like, does that not make more sense? And then I also get more utility out of whatever I'm using. And then kind of along with that is that it can't be too similar. I also have to make sure it doesn't suffer from, I think, you know, we talked about it a couple years ago, the pop effect. You know, it doesn't suffer from it's not really that unique, but it has like 1 or 2 shades that makes you think it's a different palette. And if that's the case, I'll usually opt for just buying a single of whatever I can get that's closest to that shade. And that's worked out really well for me. That also makes it really hard for me to buy palettes. If I know that I only really want it for like this one shade and I could go just buy a single of that one shade, then the palette's of no use to me. Really, the palette's gonna just sit there. And that's my one goal in my relationship, not my relationship, oh my gosh, projection much, but my one goal in my makeup collection is that I don't have things that just sit there. So yeah, it's really important to me that my palettes aren't too similar. And so that's kind of the way I've curated my collection. That's kind of where I go. It has to be something really, really unique that's not too similar to what I already own. And so yeah, guys, that's actually gonna do it for this video. I just wanted to, like I said, chat with you guys and finally get something recorded. I haven't been recording, like I said, because it's like we had a hurricane and then just storms on top of storms, and so it's been really dark and dreary out. But I figure, you know, if I keep waiting for sunlight, it's just not gonna happen. So I just decided to go ahead and do it. I apologize if the lighting's a little bit rough, but you know, Mother Nature, am I right? You know, how about them rainstorms? How about that? How about that Atlantic Ocean hurricane season storm? How about that? Anyways, as per usual, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. You can find me on Instagram at Deja Vu. You can find me on Twitter at Deja Vu 2. And then you can also check out my podcast, Grossly Overqualified, found everywhere that podcasts are found. So until then, you guys have a good rest of your, what day is it? Week? You guys have a good rest of your week, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.